Rhea Sharma never imagined her dream of studying in Australia would turn into a nightmare that placed her at the center of an international crime investigation. Rhea Sharma arrived in Melbourne with a quiet excitement that she kept mostly to herself. She had spent years preparing for this opportunity, and now she finally stepped onto a foreign land that felt both welcoming and overwhelming. The air was crisp, the streets were clean, and everything around her seemed larger and brighter than what she had imagined back home. Her scholarship in biotechnology was her family's pride, and she carried that pressure gently on her shoulders. She moved into a modest shared apartment with 2 other students who were friendly but often busy with their own schedules. Rhea preferred it that way, as she enjoyed having long, peaceful evenings to settle into her new life. Her routine formed quickly. Mornings were simple, with a quick breakfast before catching the tram to campus. Afternoons were spent in the university library, where she often found herself lost in research papers and lab manuals. She admired the advanced facilities around her and hoped she would someday contribute something valuable to the field. At night, she would walk back to her apartment, usually stopping at a small grocery store on the corner. Despite the calm, she often felt a strange sense of being watched, but she dismissed it as nervousness that comes with living in a new country. Everything appeared normal on the surface, yet there was an unsettling quietness beneath her daily life. Rhea had no idea that her peaceful routine would soon be disrupted by events she could never have anticipated, slowly pulling her into a hidden world of danger. At first, the missing items seemed too small to worry about. Rhea noticed her pen set was gone one morning, but she assumed she had misplaced it during her late-night study session. A few days later, her notebook containing rough research sketches disappeared from her desk. She blamed her own forgetfulness again, convincing herself she had left it somewhere on campus. But when her spare phone vanished from the drawer where she always kept it, the feeling of uneasiness grew stronger. She searched every corner of her room, even checking her roommate's shelves to ensure nothing had been accidentally moved, yet the phone was nowhere. The pattern became impossible to ignore when her USB drives began disappearing one by one. Each drive contained important notes and early drafts of her research report. Losing them felt like losing hours of hard work and concentration. Rhea grew anxious, wondering if she was becoming careless under pressure or if someone was entering her room without her knowledge. She checked the apartment's lock repeatedly, even tested it by tugging the door several times before leaving for class. Everything seemed normal, yet the items continued to disappear. Her roommates claimed they hadn't seen anything unusual. The building seemed safe, and the corridors were always busy with students coming and going. Despite this, Rhea felt a faint tension in the air whenever she entered her room, as if something had shifted during her absence. The missing items were small, but each one held value tied to her academic life. She couldn't shake the feeling that the disappearances were not accidental but part of something bigger creeping slowly into her routine. The sense of unease around Rhea's missing items turned into genuine worry when the university issued an unexpected announcement. An internal email circulated across the department, informing students that confidential research data had been leaked online. The message warned everyone to be cautious with their files and to report anything unusual. Rhea read it twice, feeling her stomach tighten. She had already lost her own notes and USB drives, but she never imagined something so serious was happening within the department. Later that week, Rhea received a formal notice asking her to visit the Academic Integrity Office. The request felt cold and official, and she couldn't understand why she was being called in. When she arrived, she was informed that her name had appeared on a list of suspicious accounts connected to the data breach. The system logs showed late-night access to restricted files using her university credentials. The timing was strange, because Rhea always returned to her apartment early and rarely stayed out late. She tried to recall whether she had forgotten to log out of the lab computers, but nothing made sense. Her lab access was temporarily suspended for security reasons, and she was encouraged to cooperate while the investigation continued. The news spread quietly among her classmates, and she began noticing the subtle shift in their behavior: longer glances, whispered conversations, and a sense of distance she hadn't felt before. What disturbed her the most was the thought that someone had impersonated her within the university system. The idea that another person was using her identity to access sensitive material filled her with a deep, growing fear. The university wasted no time tightening its security. New surveillance cameras were installed in hallways, labs, and computer rooms, with special attention placed on the biotechnology department. Rhea watched the changes quietly, feeling both relieved and terrified. She hoped the increased monitoring would clear her name, but she also feared what the investigation might uncover. The tension around campus was noticeable, especially among students working on sensitive research projects. Everyone seemed more cautious, logging out carefully and double-checking their belongings before leaving the labs. A week after the new cameras were activated, the Academic Integrity Office made a troubling discovery. Security footage showed a hooded figure entering the restricted laboratory using Rhea's ID card. The video was grainy and the face completely hidden, but the person moved with an uncomfortable familiarity, heading directly toward the computer terminals containing confidential research files. The timestamp on the footage matched the same nights her credentials had been flagged for unauthorized activity. The card swipe records placed the blame squarely on her. From the system's perspective, it looked like she had willingly entered the lab after hours. Rhea knew she had been at home on those nights, but there was no evidence strong enough to support her claim. The investigation tightened around her, and she began to feel isolated. She avoided eye contact in hallways and spent more time locked in her room, afraid of being judged or confronted. The footage raised more questions than answers, yet every new detail seemed to work against her. The mysterious figure had planned their movements well, leaving Rhea trapped in a growing circle of suspicion with no clear way out. The growing suspicion around Rhea reached its breaking point one early morning when the sound of urgent knocking jolted her awake. Before she could gather her thoughts, Australian authorities entered her apartment with a search warrant. Her roommate stepped aside in shock as officers began checking every corner of the small space. Rhea stood frozen, unable to understand how her quiet academic life had turned into something that looked like a crime scene. The officers moved with practiced precision, opening drawers, inspecting shelves, and examining her belongings with focused intensity. The search seemed routine at first, but everything changed when an officer pulled out a small cloth pouch from her backpack. Inside were her missing USB drives, research notes, and the spare phone she had lost weeks earlier. Rhea stared at the items in disbelief. She knew she had not put them there. The backpack was the last place she expected anything suspicious to appear. To the authorities, however, the discovery looked like solid evidence. They photographed everything, sealed the items in evidence bags, and wrote detailed notes as they worked. Rhea tried to explain that the items had been missing and must have been planted, but her words sounded weak compared to what the officers had found. She was escorted out of the apartment building as neighbors stared, some curious and others concerned. The ride to the detention center felt unreal, as if she were watching her life from outside her own body. By the time she was formally detained for suspected data theft and academic espionage, her reputation had already begun to crumble. Her once ordinary student life had completely collapsed, leaving her frightened, confused, and unsure of whom she could trust. While Rhea remained in detention, life inside her apartment building continued quietly, until a sudden maintenance complaint shifted everything. The tenants living directly below her reported unusual dripping sounds coming from their ceiling. At first, the issue seemed like a minor plumbing problem, but when the building's repair team arrived, they noticed something unusual. The noise didn't resemble a pipe leak, it sounded more like movement. The workers decided to inspect the ceiling space above Rhea's room, an area rarely accessed unless absolutely necessary. When they opened the panel, they found dust, insulation, and something far more alarming, a hidden compartment tucked between the beams. Inside it lay a collection of items that didn't belong to any resident. There were gloves, copied student ID cards, a small toolkit, and a laptop running specialized software capable of bypassing security systems. The space had clearly been used recently, with faint footprints visible in the dust. The discovery shocked the maintenance team, who immediately notified building management and the authorities. When investigators arrived, they carefully examined the hidden stash. Fingerprint scans revealed a match to someone who had previously lived in the building. This raised serious questions about how the space had been accessed and why. The evidence suggested that someone had been secretly moving through ceiling areas between apartments, entering rooms without detection, and stealing items as part of a larger plan. For the first time since the investigation began, the focus shifted away from Rhea. The hidden compartment hinted at a much more complex scheme, one that pointed to an intruder who had been stalking her movements long before the accusations surfaced. The fingerprints found in the hidden ceiling compartment led investigators to a former student named Lucas Ward, someone who had once been enrolled in the same biotechnology department as Rhea. Months before her arrival in Melbourne, Lucas had been expelled for conducting unapproved experiments and attempting to access restricted university data. After his expulsion, he disappeared from campus records, leaving no forwarding address. However, building logs revealed that he had briefly rented an apartment on the same floor as Rhea before vanishing again. The discovery connected the dots in a way that completely changed the direction of the case. Investigators pieced together the pattern. Lucas had been living secretly in unused areas of the apartment building, using the ceiling spaces to move unnoticed between rooms. He had likely entered Rhea's room multiple times when she was away, stealing her items and planting them later to make her appear guilty. The ID cards found in the hidden compartment showed signs of tampering, proving that he had duplicated Rhea's card and others to access university facilities at night. Further searches revealed that Lucas had been selling confidential research data to unknown buyers online. Rhea had simply been the easiest target to frame, a new student unfamiliar with the environment and unlikely to suspect foul play. The evidence uncovered by investigators painted a clear picture of manipulation, careful planning, and deliberate sabotage. For the first time, authorities recognized Rhea as a victim rather than a suspect. But despite the breakthrough, one major challenge remained. Lucas had vanished again, slipping away before the truth could catch up to him. Just as authorities prepared to clear Rhea's name, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A new report from Western Australia confirmed that Lucas had been spotted near the docks in Perth shortly after the hidden compartment was discovered. Surveillance cameras captured him boarding a cargo ship late at night, blending in with workers as if he belonged there. Investigators expected to find him alone, trying to escape quietly, but the footage revealed something far more troubling. He was seen meeting with two unfamiliar individuals who appeared to be expecting him. Their movements suggested a level of coordination that hinted at an organized group rather than a lone offender. When authorities reviewed the ship's onboard security recordings, the situation grew even more complicated. Lucas wasn't hiding, he seemed to be collaborating with the group, examining documents and equipment that looked suspiciously similar to university research files. This discovery pushed the case into international territory. The police realized that Lucas might be part of a larger network involved in smuggling scientific data across borders, a network that had likely been operating long before Rhea ever arrived in Australia. With this new information, Rhea was officially declared innocent and released from detention. Still, clearing her name publicly took time. Rumors lingered, and the stigma of the accusations followed her for months. Despite everything, she returned to her studies with determination, refusing to let the ordeal define her future. The documentary ends with a sense of unresolved tension. Lucas and the group he was working with remained at large, their motives still unclear. The investigation continued across multiple countries, leaving viewers with the unsettling reminder that some threats operate quietly behind the scenes, out of sight, yet dangerously close.